When my dad kicked me out of my own home to give my room to his new stepdaughter, he thought I would just disappear quietly. What he didn't know, my late mother had already set the perfect trap. And now, his dream life is about to crumble right in front of him. 3 months. That's how long it took for my dad to replace my mom. 3 months after she passed away, he stood in our living room with a smile on his face, introducing his new wife, Laura, and her daughter, Madison. I sat there in silence, still grieving, still trying to adjust to a world without my mom. Meanwhile, my dad had already moved on, as if she had never existed. But the real blow didn't come until weeks later, when he sat me down and said, "I think it's best if you move out for now. Madison needs space, and Laura and I believe this is the right decision for the family." For the family, as if I wasn't part of it. I could feel my heart pounding in my chest, the air leaving my lungs. I waited for him to take it back, to say he didn't mean it. But he didn't. He just sat there, waiting for me to accept it. Laura stood in the corner, pretending to be sympathetic, but I could see the satisfaction in her eyes. Madison, sitting smugly next to her, didn't even try to hide it. They had won. I wanted to fight. I wanted to scream. But then, something inside me shifted. Instead of anger, a strange sense of calm washed over me. I looked at my dad, really looked at him. And in that moment, I realized something. This wasn't my home anymore. Not because of Laura, not because of Madison. Because of him. The man who was supposed to protect me, to be my rock, had just made it painfully clear. I wasn't his priority anymore. So, I did the one thing they didn't expect. I stood up, nodded, and said, "Okay." Then I packed my bags and walked out the door. I didn't beg. I didn't argue. I didn't give them the satisfaction of seeing me break. My uncle, Mark, was waiting for me with open arms. He had been my mom's brother, and unlike my dad, he never once made me feel like a burden. When I told him what happened, his face turned red with anger, but he didn't say, "I told you so." He just helped me carry my bags inside and told me, "You're safe here. Take your time." For the first time in weeks, I felt like I could breathe. At first, I didn't hear from my dad. No calls, no texts, nothing. I assumed he was relieved to have me out of the way. Madison got her room. Laura got her perfect little family. And I was just a memory, or so they thought. Because while they were busy celebrating their new life, something arrived in the mail. Something they never saw coming. And just like that, their perfect world started to fall apart. For the first few days after I left, the silence from my dad was deafening. No calls, no texts, nothing. It was as if I had never existed. Part of me expected it. He had already erased my mom so easily. So why wouldn't he do the same to me? I told myself I didn't care. I was safe at Uncle Mark's house, and for the first time in a long time, I could breathe without walking on eggshells. But then, out of nowhere, my phone started buzzing. Once, twice, then over and over again. Missed calls, voicemails, messages flooding in. At first, I ignored them. What was there to say? He had made his choice and I had made mine. But then, curiosity got the best of me. I opened the last text from my dad, and my stomach twisted as I read the words. "We need to talk. It's important. Call me back." I almost laughed. Important? Since when did anything about me become important to him? But something about the urgency in his messages made me pause. Against my better judgment, I called him back. The moment he answered, I knew something was wrong. His voice, usually so controlled, was shaking. "Listen, I don't have time to explain over the phone. We need to meet." I leaned back in my chair, feeling the sudden shift in power. "Oh, now you need me?" "Not happening," I said flatly. His tone changed instantly, frustration creeping in. "This isn't a game. You need to come back home. We can work this out." Home. As if that house had ever felt like home since he let them take over. I clenched my jaw, about to hang up, when he blurted out the words that changed everything. "Your mother's lawyer sent something about the house." A chill ran down my spine. "What do you mean?" He hesitated. "Just come back, and we'll talk." "No way. Not after everything." I hung up and turned to Uncle Mark. When I told him what Dad had said, his expression darkened. He reached for his phone, muttering, "Let's call your mom's lawyer." 10 minutes later, I had my answer. Turns out my mom had been one step ahead of everyone. She had left half the house to me. Not to my dad. Not to them. To me. That meant my dad couldn't sell it. He couldn't even make big changes without my consent. And suddenly, I understood his panic. He had promised Laura and Madison a new life in my home. They thought they had one. But the house was legally mine. And now their dream was falling apart. The texts and calls didn't stop after that. First, it was my dad. Then it was Laura. Her tone suddenly sweet, like she hadn't spent the last few weeks treating me like a guest in my own house. She said we could work something out. That family should stick together. Right? Family. The same family that had kicked me out without a second thought. When I ignored them, the rest of the family started reaching out. My phone blew up with messages. "Your dad is under a lot of stress. You need to be the bigger person. Stop being stubborn and come home." Funny. No one cared when I was the one grieving. No one told my dad to be the bigger person when he threw me out. But now that they needed me, suddenly I was being selfish? I wasn't playing their game. But as I stared at my phone, a thought crept in. If my mom had made sure to protect me in the will, what else had she planned for? I was about to find out. And trust me, this story was far from over. Before I share what happened next, I want to connect with you, my amazing viewers. Have you ever been in a situation where you had to stand your ground even when everyone was against you? Let me know in the comments. And if you believe that karma always catches up, hit that like button because trust me, in the next part, karma is about to hit hard. Just when I thought things couldn't get any worse, life decided to prove me wrong. One evening, as I was settling into my new routine at Uncle Mark's house, I got a message from my cousin, Samantha. It was short and to the point. "We need to talk. Meet me tomorrow. It's about your dad." I hesitated. Samantha was one of the few people from my dad's side who hadn't blown up my phone, begging me to come back. If she was reaching out now, something was up. The next day, we met at a small coffee shop. She looked nervous, playing with the lid of her cup. Finally, she took a deep breath and said, "I don't know if I should be telling you this, but you deserve to know the truth." That's when she dropped the bomb. My dad hadn't just reconnected with Laura after my mom passed away. He had been involved with her before. Long before. Samantha had seen them together months before my mom even got sick. At first, she had convinced herself it was just an innocent friendship. But the way they looked at each other, the way they talked, it wasn't hard to put the pieces together. And then came the part that made my blood run cold. A few weeks before my mom passed, Samantha had found the courage to tell her what she had seen. I felt the air leave my lungs. My mom knew. While she was fighting for her life, she had to live with the knowledge that the man she loved had already moved on. Everything started making sense. The quiet moments where she seemed lost in thought. The way she made sure I knew she loved me, that I would always be protected. She knew. And instead of confronting my dad, she did something better. She made sure that even after she was gone, I wouldn't be left at his mercy. That's why she left me half the house. She wasn't just protecting my future, she was sending a message. I sat there, gripping my coffee cup, my heart pounding. Samantha looked at me, guilt in her eyes. "I didn't know if I should tell you. My mom said it wasn't my place, but I just couldn't keep it from you anymore." I swallowed hard, my mind racing. Does Laura know that my mom found out? Samantha hesitated. "I don't think so. But your dad does. And if he knows you know, things are going to get messy." Messy didn't even begin to describe it. I walked out of that coffee shop feeling like I had just stepped into a whole new reality. My dad hadn't just betrayed my mom, he had betrayed me. He had let me believe he was grieving when, in reality, he had already been planning his next life. And now he was desperate to get me back under his control. I had given him the benefit of the doubt. I had walked away quietly. But this changed everything. I wasn't just going to let this go. I was going to make sure he never forgot what he did. And the first step? Facing him. I had walked away once. I had given my dad the chance to prove that maybe, just maybe, he still cared. But now? Now I knew the truth. He had betrayed my mother long before she was gone, and he had lied to me about it for years. And worst of all, he had the audacity to kick me out of my own home for the woman he cheated with. I wasn't going to let that slide. So I went back. Not to move in. Not to make peace. But to make sure he knew that I would never be controlled by him again. The moment I walked into the house, I could feel the tension in the air. My dad and Laura were sitting in the living room, waiting. Madison was nowhere to be seen, probably hiding in her new, stolen room. My dad stood up quickly, relief flashing across his face. "I knew you'd come back," he said, as if this was some kind of emotional reunion. I didn't sit down. I didn't smile. I just stared at him, my heart pounding, my hands clenched at my sides. "I know about the affair," I said. Just like that, the room went silent. Laura stiffened. My dad's face went pale. His lips parted slightly, as if scrambling for the right words, but nothing came out. "Good. Let him feel what it's like to be blindsided." "I know you were with her while Mom was still alive," I continued, my voice steady. "I know Mom found out before she passed. And now I know exactly why she left me half the house." Laura shifted uncomfortably. "It's not." I cut her off with a sharp glare. You don't get to explain this away." My dad finally found his voice. "Listen, it's complicated. Your mother and we had our problems. But that doesn't change the fact that I love you, and I want us to fix this." I laughed. Actually laughed. "Fix this? You mean, convince me to hand over my share of the house, so you can keep playing happy family?" His face darkened. "That's not fair." "No, you know what's not fair? My mom dying while you were sneaking around with her replacement. You know what's not fair? You throwing me out of my own home like I was nothing. And now that you need me, you suddenly want to make things right?" I stepped forward, lowering my voice. "You don't want me back. You want control. And you don't have it anymore." The reality of the situation was sinking in for him now. Laura's hand found his arm, a silent plea for him to do something, say something. But there was nothing he could say that would change what he had done. I took a deep breath and dropped the final bomb. "I'm selling my half of the house." Laura gasped. My dad's eyes widened in horror. "You can't do that," he said, voice sharp. "This is a family home." I shrugged. "No, it was Mom's home, and you disrespected her memory the second you brought her in here." I gestured toward Laura. "So I don't care who buys it. I just want it gone." He looked genuinely panicked now. "Wait, be reasonable. We can work something out." "No," I said simply. "We can't." I turned on my heel and walked to the front door. My dad's voice followed me, growing desperate. "You're being stubborn. Think about what you're doing." I paused, glancing over my shoulder one last time. "No, Dad, you should have thought about what you were doing." And then I walked out. I never looked back. 3 months later, I signed the papers, officially selling my half of the house to a complete stranger. And just like that, my dad and Laura's perfect little world crumbled. They couldn't afford to buy me out, and the new owner wasn't interested in letting them stay. They were forced to sell and move out. Karma had done its job. As for me, I moved on. I had lost a father, but I had gained my freedom. And in the end, that was worth more than anything money could buy. Some people say revenge is best served cold. I disagree. It's best served legally, with a notarized signature, and a smirk on your face as you walk away. This story isn't just about betrayal and revenge. It's about justice, self-respect, and knowing when to walk away. It teaches us that sometimes, the people we trust the most can let us down in ways we never expected. But instead of letting that pain consume us, we can rise above it, take control, and build a future where we are no longer at the mercy of those who don't value us. MC could have fought, could have begged his father to treat him better. But he didn't. He chose dignity over desperation. He chose silence over screaming, action over argument, and in the end, he won without ever having to play dirty. And the best part? Karma took care of the rest. Now, I want to hear from you. Did you enjoy the story? Comment 2 if you loved it, or 7 if you think it should have ended differently. And if you believe that karma always finds its way back around, smash that like button. And hey, if you love gripping, emotional stories that keep you on the edge of your seat, make sure to subscribe to Mr.HeartVibes so you never miss another one. Because trust me, there's always another story waiting to be told.